Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver, and it has been nothing but madness in the National Basketball Association over the past 24 hours or so. Free agency literally kicked off 24 hours ago right now, at the time that we are recording this show and going live. So appreciate everybody stopping by, as always, to watch the show. But we got a lot to talk about today. The Brooklyn Nets are an absolute mess. This isn't exactly news to anybody, but I'm going to talk about their two stars. I'm going to lead off with Kyrie Irving, particularly Kyrie Irving and his reported possible link to the Los Angeles Lakers, and then Kevin Durant. I know the two teams that he has at the top of his wish list are the Heat and the Suns, but there's another team that I thought about, and I was like, you know what? This could actually work for both teams. I'll get into that later in the show, as well as the Celtics just fleecing the Indiana Pacers to get Malcolm Brogdon. I absolutely love the move. I'll get to that later in the show, as well as USC and UCLA now moving to the Big Ten, and Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert to the Minnesota Timberwolves. This is just yet another example of Minnesota not knowing what the heck they're doing. I'll get to that later in the show. Confusing trade. But first, let's start with Kyrie Irving, who is going to be traded. We know at this point now that Kevin Durant is asked out. There's no point for the Brooklyn Nets. The only reason the Brooklyn Nets signed Kyrie is because he came with Kevin Durant. And so now that the biggest domino is about to fall, the fact that he's going to be gone in relatively short order, then the second domino, Kyrie Irving, the weirdest domino, you know where he's going to fall on any given day, he's going to be gone as well. And once again, as was the case before Kyrie opted into the last year of his deal, one team's interested. The Los Angeles Lakers. Nobody else wants to even touch Kyrie. No, people don't want anything to do with this guy, but the Lakers. And I think I don't think this is any coincidence. I don't think it's just the LeBron James thing, although I think that factors. But what I think it is, once again, for the Los Angeles Lakers is, I'll repeat a line that I said on this very show last year during free agency. This reeks of desperation. Said that last year with their free agent moves. Last year they went out and got Trevor Ariza and Dwight Howard and Kent Bazemore and Wayne Ellington and guys who didn't pan out so well for them. This year, kind of like the moves the Lakers have been making. Lonnie Walker, my guy. Shout out Juan Toscano Anderson. Best of luck in Los Angeles. Love that guy. They've also acquired many other names. Damian Jones. Made some nice moves. Young legs, good defensively, coachable. Fits what Darvin Ham wants to do. Fits LeBron James well. However, you bring Kyrie Irving to the building, that cancels all of it. Well, Bryson, they'll be getting rid of Russell Westbrook. Sure they will. That's one headache off your hand, but I don't know. Is it the greatest trade-off to have the worst migraine in the world? You trade that in for chronic arthritis? Because that's what this is. What the Lakers are doing, and you see this all the time with desperate franchises. Heck, you just saw it with the Cleveland Browns and going out and getting Deshaun Watson. That the Lakers, a once proud franchise, heck, a team that was the NBA champions less than 2 years ago. A team that is some of the greatest players of all time. With the Lakers, by a country mile, have more all-time great players than any other franchise. I mean, we're talking Jerry West, Wilt, Elgin Baylor, guys like Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and James Worthy. And you go into the late 90s, early 2000s, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, Pau Gasol. Now, LeBron James. All-time legends in the history of the great sport of basketball that have played for this franchise. But once again, this is the Lakers team that is looking to be desperate. Maybe not looking to be desperate, but certainly appear that way. Because they went out and got Russell Westbrook last year from the Washington Wizards. They said LeBron can fix him. We, the Lakers, the purple and gold, can fix him. No. Russell Westbrook's been playing the same way for 13 years. He's not changing for Los Angeles or for LeBron. If anything else, actually Los Angeles enables him. Everybody knows, stay away from Russ. Don't piss him off. That's what Oklahoma City did, right? They were like, just don't. Got to walk on eggshells with this guy a little bit. And what did that do? It made Kevin Durant leave. To the Lakers' credit, they, for the most part, recognized that, at least the early part of the season. But Russell Westbrook's from LA. He's from LA. He grew up a Lakers fan. So if anything else, he's just going to, it's like they say, if the two things that make you more of what you are money and alcohol. Well, in the case of Russell Westbrook, what made him more of what he is comfort zone. He's from LA. He grew up a Lakers fan. So he's just going to be more of what he already is. Kyrie Irving now. And I'm hearing a lot of Lakers fans. Yes, you can team up LeBron and Kyrie now. Okay. See how that works. This isn't Cleveland. Okay. Because we're talking about a Kyrie Irving who, in 2017, the Cavs had just come off their third consecutive finals appearance, and it didn't look like there was anybody in the Eastern Conference that was even going to give them any contest. If you remember, the last 2 years, the year they won the championship, 2016 and 2017, in the Eastern Conference, the Cleveland Cavaliers lost a combined 3 playoff games. 3. In 2 years in the Eastern Conference, they lost 3 playoff games. Nobody in the East was touching that team. And Kyrie left that. He left LeBron. He left a reliable third star in Kevin Love. He left an exceptional head coach in Ty Lue to be the man in Boston. Well, he chose Boston. I'll give him that. It's a well-run franchise, well-coached, deep, young, good veterans. Okay. Goes to Boston. Unfortunately gets hurt late in the season. Misses the remainder of the season. And a bunch of kids, Jason Tatum, Terry Rozier, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, take the Boston Celtics to within a single game of the NBA Finals against the king, LeBron James. Well, Kyrie comes back the following season. We're like, oh, Boston almost got to the finals without him. With him, it's the shoo-in to get to the finals out of the Eastern Conference. And Kyrie had about as bad a playoff series as you could possibly have in round 2 against the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Celtics were bounced in 5 games. So in a good culture, Boston blew up the locker room, took shots at teammates, didn't get along with Brad Stevens, didn't like the Celtics front office, and so he left to go to Brooklyn to play with his buddy Kevin Durant. And in a non-stable Nets culture, it was one thing after another, after another. Year 1, it was injuries. We know Kyrie, since his early days in Cleveland, heck, back to his days in Duke, has never been a guy that you can trust to stay healthy throughout the entirety of a season. And so, Kyrie Irving, year 2, comes back with Kevin Durant. The insurrection at the Capitol happens. Everybody in their right mind is mad and angry. Kyrie takes 2 weeks off because he's upset about it. So you're telling me the rest of the NBA wasn't upset about it? They thought about suspending games that day, that night, I should say. But Kyrie is the smartest guy in the room. He is deeply impacted by this. So deeply impacted that in his 2-week absence, found him at the club, living it up, while his teammates are trying to build chemistry and try and win a championship. And in year 3, we all know he refused to get vaccinated. And as a result, there are a number of events that we don't have enough time to get into today. He played 29 games, and the Nets were swept in the first round. But the Lakers are going to change him. LeBron is going to change. LeBron couldn't change him the first time around. Now Kyrie's been enabled by the Brooklyn Nets culture. He's going to the bright lights of Los Angeles. But LeBron's going to change him. Right. I'll tell you what the Lakers are. They are the person who gets into relationships with bad people. And Each time the person they go out with, they begin a relationship with, they have a little bit of baggage, right? Not the greatest dating history themselves, but they say, no, I can change him because I'm a good person. No, you can't change them. Kyrie Irving is who he is. He's 31 years old. He just completed his 11th NBA season. He ain't changing for nobody. Lakers and even LeBron included. This will be a disaster if it comes to pass. My expectations for the Lakers, should they make this deal happen, and reportedly, according to Stephen A. Smith, Kyrie is trying to force his way to Los Angeles. My reaction, at best, 7 seed. LeBron didn't even play 60 games last season due to injury. AD, always down. Shot under 20% from three. But again, he has yet to touch maybe he's touched one by now. But for 2 months, the man did not touch a basketball, even though he was horrendous from three-point range and played 36 games. And then you bring Kyrie Irving in, who played 29 games. Now, the vaccine thing isn't going to be an issue, but it's going to be something else. To, once again, go back to Stephen A. Smith, I thought he had the line of the year. Kyrie Irving is the ultimate professional at missing work. And listen, we know what this man can do on the court. I've said religiously, I'm not a Kyrie Irving fan, but I have always said there has never been a player, in my view, in NBA history, including my man Steph Curry, who has a greater handle than Kyrie Irving. Dude has the ball on a string. Dude can dance on anybody. On anybody. Better than Curry, better than Iverson, better than Jamal Crawford, Jay Crossover. Got a better handle than any of them. Can get a shot, is incredibly efficient for a small player. I'm old enough to remember just 3 months ago, in the playing game against the Cavs, when Kyrie Irving went like 14 for his first 14. Can shoot the basketball, can get to the rim. It has an unbelievable finishing package, can knock down his free throws. He's a defensive liability, but there's some star players that are. That's not the issue. The issue isn't that. It's the locker room stuff. It's the off the court nonsense. Earth is flat. Lakers are not going to change that. LeBron is not going to change that. Look, would I take 50? Listen, you get 50 games out of Kyrie Irving, congratulations. We ought to give you an award. But if you get 50 games out of Kyrie compared to 78 of Westbrook, sure, I'd take Kyrie too. Once again, it's like going from terrible migraine to arthritis. It's not that much better. So this is who the Lakers are. They are about as I don't think they get enough credit since the passing of Dr. Jerry Buss for being one of the more dysfunctional franchises in basketball. The only reason that they are even sniffing relevance is LeBron James. That's it. There's no LeBron. You just got Anthony Davis and Westbrook and kids I like. I genuinely like the move the Lakers have made over the last 24 hours. And I think they'll probably bring back Carmelo Anthony. I'm good with that. Right? Melo's a good veteran, can score off the bench. Like the move. But all that gets canceled if you bring Kyrie Irving into the building. He's more efficient than Westbrook. That's about it. He's less available. I'd say Westbrook's probably slightly more coachable than Kyrie Irving. The man had Ty Lue and Brad Stevens. And it was in one ear, out the other. I don't think Darvin Ham, a rookie head coach, much as I respect the guy, is going to be the guy who gets to Kyrie Irving. Highly doubt it. Highly doubt it. This I'm telling y'all, Laker fans, be very, very careful what you wish for. Be very careful what you wish for. I'm just saying. And you're not getting, by the way, you're not getting Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving together. That's not going to happen. It's not. There's no way. Okay, so let's move to Kyrie's now. It's going to be his former co-star, Kevin Durant, a guy who I've said over and over, is the most gifted scorer I've ever seen in my life. I said Kyrie's the greatest ball handler I've ever seen. Kevin Durant's the most gifted scorer I've ever seen in my life. And, of course, the events of the Brooklyn Nets, the turmoil going on there was really springboarded, if you will, by Kevin Durant requesting a trade yesterday. He went directly to the owner, I think Josiah is his name, and requested a trade out of Brooklyn. And so here's the thing with Kevin Durant. The two teams, and I talked about KD yesterday. I'll try and get that video uploaded to YouTube for those of you that weren't able to see it. But Kevin Durant, the two teams that were on his wish list, the Phoenix Suns and the Miami Heat. And I said, it's basically, it's very similar to Golden State in structure. Not team. Golden State's the defending champions again. You see my hat there. But in structure, pretty similar. Well-run front office, excellent head coach, and an emotional leader. In Golden State, kind of two leaders. Draymond was the emotional leader. Steph is kind of the heartbeat of the team. Kind of I've always said, the engine that makes the Warriors go. But in Phoenix, Chris Paul is not the best player on the team. Devin Booker is better than Chris Paul. But Chris Paul is the emotional leader. I've always said, without Chris Paul, the Phoenix Suns are a 41-win team. The last 2 years, they made the NBA Finals, and for their postseason failures last year, they did win, 64 games? That's the Chris Paul effect. Emotional leader, doesn't care to get in your butt. And then in Miami, excellent head coach Eric Spoelstra. I think a Hall of Fame coach Eric Spoelstra. Well-run front office. We know about Pat Riley. And the emotional leader, Jimmy Butler. Who, pretty much, I wouldn't say destroyed 2 or 3 locker rooms, but he can rub people the wrong way. His leadership style is very similar to that of Michael Jordan. Obviously, Jordan fanatics. I'm not saying that Jimmy is Michael. Of course not. But the leadership style is very, very similar. And if you get a young group who listens to Jimmy, goes along with Jimmy, 2 years ago, you make the NBA Finals. This year, you come within a Jimmy Butler missed 3 of making the NBA Finals again for the second time in 3 years. Set cultures. That's where KD wants to go to. So here's the real thing that nobody is talking about. Because Kevin Durant's contract does not expire until 2026, and because, let's be real, the KD-Kyrie experiment flunked. It was an F, if we're giving it a letter grade. Because of those two factors, Brooklyn can trade him wherever they want. KD has very little leverage in this situation. The Nets got all of it. So I was thinking, okay, how would this work? Okay, so, Miami, probably not. I actually just read a report. I don't know if it was from Brian Windhorst, who, by the way, has been all over. He was all over the Minnesota and Utah situation. Credit to Wendy. He's one of the best in the business. I forgot who the report was from. I just saw it like 15 minutes ago. But Kevin Durant reportedly does not want to go to the Miami Heat unless he plays with Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, and Bam Adebayo. Well, that's not really realistic because the Heat will have to trade 1, maybe even 2 of those guys, along with a number of draft picks. I mean, I don't know, what Miami give up? Like Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Dwayne Dedmon, Victor Oladipo, and picks. I don't think Brooklyn's going to take that. The Clippers, I've heard some suggest Paul George for Kevin Durant. I don't know what's the objective for that if you're Brooklyn. Paul George and Ben Simmons, that doesn't really fit together that well. And so I thought about it. Okay, there's some interesting teams. New Orleans has the assets. Obviously, they just signed Zion to a massive extension. They've got C.J. McCollum. They've got Brandon Ingram. They've got a ton of young players who played excellent for them last year. Okay, like maybe, but then again, I think New Orleans kind of wants to go with the group they have now, develop their guys, and let's see what they can build. Willie Green, I've sang his praises on the show multiple times. I think he's done a phenomenal job. I love the direction the Pelicans are going for the first time in their history. And I thought about it. I was like, here we go. And this was a team actually I kind of scoffed at yesterday because during yesterday's show, shout out to Barry Grant Jr., shout out to John Rivera, 2 frequent guests on the show. Both were on the show yesterday for 2 hours we were covering free agency. And this news broke during the show yesterday that a certain team was interested or was contacting the Brooklyn Nets about a Kevin Durant trade. And I said, I don't know about the fit. It just doesn't seem to work. And then today happened. And this team that I'm about to mention made two, I think, excellent moves. Excellent moves. And it's credit to the front office led by Brad Stevens. I'm talking about the Boston Celtics. Kevin Durant to the Boston Celtics. How would that go through? Well, I will show you. I will read it for the podcast audience. The Celtics, of course, would get Kevin Durant. The Nets would get Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Al Horford, and 2 first-round picks. Now, let's start with the Nets. Here's why this trade makes sense for them. Number one, we know they're sort of trying to make the decision, are we going to a rebuild? Because we have no assets. We gave up, the Nets did pretty bad business the last 2 years. This is to go get James Harden, right? And then they gave up even more assets to go get Ben Simmons, who still has yet to play a game for them. Bad business the last 2 years. But the good news is, with this, they can fix all that. You get Jaylen Brown, who's an all-star level player. You get Marcus Smart. All he did was win Defensive Player of the Year. You get Al Horford. I'll get to Al Horford in just a second. You get the 2 first-round picks. So, the 2 first-round picks, which would be lower first-round picks, considering Boston's going to be a championship contender again next year, and Al Horford. Where's Al Horford factor in here? He brings something that the Nets haven't had even with KD, Kyrie, and Harden. And even this year, KD and Kyrie. Veteran leadership. Ask any NBA star player in this league that's 30 years old or older, and ask them how important having veteran guys on your basketball team is. Al Horford is about as good as they come in that department. So, we're talking about a starting lineup possibly of Patty Mills, Joe Harris, Jaylen Brown, probably Ben Simmons, and Nick Claxton, with Marcus Smart coming off the bench. I kind of like it. That's a team that could maybe make a run at the playoffs. So you have a team that can make a run at the playoffs, build a new sort of identity in Brooklyn, and you have assets now. You have 2 first-round picks. As for the Boston Celtics now, obviously, who wouldn't take Kevin Durant? You've got the set culture. Now that you would trade Marcus Smart, you don't have the guy who's going to get in everybody's behind. But you're talking about a starting lineup now of Malcolm Brogdon, a move that I absolutely love for the Celtics. By the way, they got Malcolm Brogdon for nothing. Okay, I'm pulling it up right here. The Celtics got Malcolm Brogdon, who was the Rookie of the Year in 2017, was excellent with the Bucks in their, sort of emergence as a franchise. They got Malcolm Brogdon for Daniel Tice, Aaron Nesmith, and a 2023 first-round pick. That's it. For Malcolm Brogdon, a true starting point guard in this NBA, who can get his own shots, who is money from the free throw line, controls the offense well, doesn't turn the ball over near as much as, frankly, anybody in the Boston team, especially Marcus Smart and Jason Tatum. You're talking about a starting lineup of Malcolm Brogdon, of Jason Tatum, of Kevin Durant. You would probably have to slide somebody like a Grant Williams into the starting lineup, and Robert Williams, your rim protector. That sounds like a championship team. Maybe not even just a championship team, but a championship contender. Keep in mind, you still have solid guys come off the bench. Peyton Pritchard, Derek White. That possibly makes Boston the favorite in the Eastern Conference over Milwaukee. So, to me, this trade makes perfect sense for both teams. Brooklyn gets to put together a I would say a playoff level starting five and get some first round picks, have some assets, have some guys you can bring in the building, sort of rebuild what has been a really fractured culture ever since KD and Kyrie got there 3 years ago. They'll probably fire Steve Nash midseason, replace him with a more competent coach, and go from there. Because right now the Nets are stuck. But with this, they get an all-star level player. They do have Ben Simmons, which, I'm not high on Ben Simmons in the slightest, but keeping it objective on the show, he was a 3-time all-star. You have, obviously, Marcus Smart, a defensive player of the year. You have Al Horford, who's a great veteran leader to bring to that team. Look at the impact he had in this Boston Celtics team. I think he's a Hall of Famer, personally, if you look at his Florida career. And the 2 first-rounders. And then for Boston, Tatum, Durant, Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, who when healthy might be the best shot blocker in basketball. That team's scary, folks. And Danilo Gallinari is likely coming to Boston. A stretch 4 who can shoot the 3 and play defense. So this fixes all of Boston's issues. They have a guy that they can go to who, if the game gets a little out of hand, we know Jason Tatum gets a little tentative in these situations, and Jaylen Brown isn't talented enough to go get it in those situations consistently. Boom, you had Kevin Durant, problem solved. A guy who can control the offense, can limit the turnovers, Malcolm Brogdon. Adding depth, Danilo Gallinari. And now they're used to the Ime Udoka system. So they'll be a great defensive team again. I'm telling you, this makes the most sense. Denver. I know a lot of people have suggested the Denver Nuggets. Here's the thing about Denver. There is, in the CBA, in the collective bargaining agreement, there are, due to Ben Simmons being on the Nets roster, and I'm just reading this off my phone because I was reading this earlier. Due to the CBA rule and designated rookie contracts, there are certain guys that the Nets cannot get. 2 of those players are Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. So Denver's not really an option unless they make some other moves to try and make the pathway for that clear. Miami, well, KD wants to go to Miami and play with Jimmy, Adebayo, and Lowry. Well, that's not realistic. Miami has to trade at least one of those guys to go get Kevin Durant. I'm telling you, set culture in Boston, well-run front office, excellent head coach. No, they don't have the get in your butt guy, like I mentioned with the Heat and the Suns. I think it works. I really do. And if it happens, Boston's the favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference, and we'll probably have ourselves set for a Celtics-Warriors Part 2 next year. And we get a Kevin Durant versus Warriors finals, which I think the whole NBA world would be rooting for to happen. Because we know, I think the whole NBA world, safe to say, will be rooting for one Steph Curry, without a question. So, doggone it, my Red Sox lost the Cubs. Crap. But again, I think for Boston, what really changed my mind about all this is Malcolm Brogdon and Danilo Gallinari coming in. 2 excellent moves. Again, Gallinari, they're bringing off the street. And then Brogdon, they didn't have to give up Smart, Robert Williams. They got him for like 2 bench guys who barely played in the NBA Finals. I think it works. I really do. So, bottom line takeaway with this whole Nets conundrum. Kyrie Irving, Laker fans, careful what you wish for. And in Boston, you have the assets to go get Kevin Durant. I'll put this up on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook one more time. Celtics get KD. Nets get Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Al Horford, and 2 first-round picks. I think in terms of fit, I think in terms of the direction that these 2 teams are going now, I think it makes perfect sense. Something else, too, for the Nets, they would have 2016's first and third overall picks in Ben Simmons and Jaylen Brown. I'm just saying. I think that works. Um, I wasn't terribly high on Boston going into next season. I felt like that their best win. I'm not saying their window's closed, or I wasn't saying their window's closed, but I feel like their best opportunity to win a championship was this year. A Warriors team that was a little beat up coming in, and all these different scenarios. You got the home court advantage after stealing game one at the Chase Center. You have a 2-1 lead, and in game four, nobody except for Andrew Wiggins comes along for the ride with Steph, and you still lose that game. And at that point, I said, it's over. Golden State in 6. And of course, you could see I'm wearing the championship hat yet again on this show. And I'm not taking it off anytime soon. Speaking of my Warriors, a little off topic. This has been a weird period as a Warriors fan because my team's lost a lot of guys recently. Nemanja Bjelica is going back overseas to play basketball. Shout out to him. And big shout out to him and what he did for this championship team. His defense, his 3-point shooting, greatly appreciated. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Juan Toscano-Anderson, I will say it again. They're going to make a movie one day about Juan Toscano-Anderson and this kid's story to get to the NBA, his hometown Warriors, and guess what? He won a championship this year. So the Lakers are going to like this kid. I'm telling you. Laker fans, I'm warning you about Kyrie, but I will say, Laker fans, you're going to like Juan Toscano-Anderson without a question. And but we lost him. We lost Otto Porter Jr. and Gary Payton. Those two was really a punch in the gut. Otto Porter Jr., excellent rebounder, excellent 3-point shooter, and was massive, especially in the Memphis Grizzlies series. For those two reasons, in game 4 especially, he hit some timely shots when we came back and won that game. So shout out Otto Porter Jr. going to the Toronto Raptors. And reportedly it was because his wife is from Toronto. So, hey, there's more. You get paid more in Toronto, although I don't know how that adds out given the taxes. But, it's not like San Francisco is a cheap place to live either. So he gets paid more in Toronto. His wife's from there, so she gets to come home. So shout out to the Porter family and best wishes to Lionel Richie, Wilt Chamberlain, whichever one he looks like to you. And what you got to call him now is an NBA champion. So shout out to Otto Porter and Gary Payton. Gary Payton II, the son of the OG, not the claw, that's Kawhi. The glove, Gary Payton, who up until Marcus Smart this year was the last guard to win Defensive Player of the Year. Gary Payton II have bounced around the NBA, comes to the Warriors, and is an integral part defensively and with his timely shot making on a championship team. And so shout out to Gary Payton II. He's going to Portland, getting his money there. The fact that he was going to be like a video coordinator or something for the Warriors, seriously, guy was going to be like a staffer for the Warriors. And now he's getting a $30 million contract to go to the Portland Trailblazers. Phenomenal story. Huge part of my Dubs winning a championship this year. Shout out to him. Hate to lose all these guys, but big shout out to them and nothing but the best wishes for them in their career moving forward with the new teams that they have gone to. But we did get some good news in Golden State. Kevon Looney is coming back on a 3-year, $25 million contract. So big shout out to my man Loon. Love that guy. Did not miss a single game this season. Played 82 in the regular season. 10, 16. Okay, so Kevon Looney played all 104 games that the Warriors played this season. And this is a guy who had his injury problems the first 4 or 5 years of his career, got healthy finally and was huge. So to have him coming back, he's going to be coming off the bench now that James Wiseman is going to be healthy. The man had 22 rebounds in a game against the Memphis Grizzlies in that closeout game 6. So, and he can score inside, excellent screen setter. I've always said for his size, excellent perimeter defender. So, just thrilled that the Warriors can bring Kevon Looney back. One of the better backup centers in the NBA without a question. He's going to be now that James Wiseman will come back into the starting lineup. So a bittersweet day to be a Warriors fan. But what this also means for my Warriors is that now this is the time for Jonathan Kuminga, for Moses Moody, Wiseman, as I mentioned. Jordan Poole's going to have, I think, an elevated role this season, given what he's done the last 2. So it's really going to be the veterans in Golden State, and obviously Bob Myers will make a couple of moves in free agency to add to the bench. Andrew Wiggins, and then the kids. So it's gonna be interesting to see excuse me, how this works. But you know what I got? Dubs back to back, as the great Drizzy Drake said. Moving on now to college football, college sports, really, which I don't get a chance to talk about a whole lot on my show. USC and UCLA is going to the Big Ten starting in 2024. They're leaving the Pac-12 to go to the Big Ten. I will say this, in terms of business, this is, good for USC and UCLA because, look, the Pac-12, man, is, if we're going to rank the Power 5 conferences, I'd put the Pac-12 in dead last. I'd rank, obviously, SEC. It just means more. SEC at the top. I put the Big Ten in second. I'd probably put the ACC third, Big 12 fourth, Pac-12 fifth. It is a dying conference. The only few programs to really be proud of at this point are consistently in the majority of the sports are Stanford, USC, UCLA, Oregon, Arizona. Like that's about where it ends. You got your Oregon States in there, and I mentioned Arizona. Arizona's football program is abysmal, and UCLA's isn't in the greatest spot either. So what this is two all-time great programs. UCLA majority for the most part in basketball, and USC in football. Sam, how do we grow our brand? Now, the only concern for these two is going to be travel, of course. They're going to have to travel to Ann Arbor, Michigan, or they're going to have to be traveling to Ohio State in Columbus, to Wisconsin. So, it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment, certainly for the student athletes, certainly for the coaches and the athletic programs. The travel is going to be the only concern. But this is the future of college football. Because that's what it's all about. The majority of college sports revenue comes from football. The majority of these schools, that is the case. And so we've seen, obviously now, Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, which obviously is a pretty big dent in the armor. It's more of a dent, it's more like some damage in the armor of the Big 12. So you got 16 teams in the SEC, 16 teams in the Big 10 now. And it's being reported that the ACC and the Pac-12 are possibly going to merge as a power conference. This is the future of college sports. Got to adapt, got to adjust with it. Because now that the NIL has come into play, thank God it's come into play. I've been calling for the NIL to be a thing, name, image, likeness, ever since the start of carving it up with the whole James Wiseman and Chase Young situation. But with the NIL coming in, now you have, Nico, I don't know how to say his last name, who's going to be coming to my Tennessee Volunteer football program next season. He's worth like $8 million. And so these programs now are going to the opportunity. The big money programs is where these top recruits are going to end up going. That's going to be the reality of college football. That's why you see Nick Saban getting it. I love Nick Saban. I have the ultimate respect for the guy. He's the greatest college football coach ever, even above Bear Bryant. But Nick Saban's getting a little uncomfortable because there's not as much money in Tuscaloosa, Alabama as there is in College Station at Texas A&M. That's why you see him and Jimbo Fisher getting, I was away on vacation when that all happened, so I wasn't able to talk about the show, but that's why you saw them going back and forth. Nick's getting a little uncomfortable, and that's how it is in college sports right now. The Pac-12 refused to adjust. Okay, UCLA, USC, we're gone. We're going to go to the more stable conference, the Big Ten. Only concern for these two schools is going to be travel. That's going to be the only issue. But outside of that, I love it. I love it. It adds competition. Because here's the thing, too, about the Big Ten when it comes to football. Outside of Ohio State, talking specifically of USC, where are they going to go? Now, who can compete with these guys? The recruiting has skyrocketed ever since Lincoln Riley was hired there. I love it. I absolutely love it because to me, people talk about, oh, it takes away from competition. Actually, I think it enhances it because now USC is competing with Ohio State. UCLA is competing with Michigan. In the SEC, Oklahoma is competing with Texas A&M. Texas is competing with Georgia. I'm all for it. Is it the death of rivalries? Maybe we can schedule those rivalries back in. Maybe this is an opportunity for college football to say, you know what? Nobody really cares about when Alabama plays Mercer. Nobody watches those games outside of Mercer and Alabama. Heck, I'd say half Alabama fans don't watch those games. So, if you're talking about, oh, we're concerned about the rivalry between USC and Stanford. Okay, then schedule Stanford into USC's schedule instead of a little school. Now, you could say that's not fair to the little schools, and I give you that. But it would make college football a whole lot more interesting, wouldn't it? Where every single game really, truly matters. There's no off weeks. I think this actually enhances the competition as opposed to takes away from it. Takes away from the Pac-12, yes, but again, rank the Power 5 conferences. Pac-12's in dead last. It is. I mean, Stanford's winning all the national championships in the other sports that's not football and men's basketball. You're talking women's basketball has a great program. I think their volleyball program is top tier. Like Stanford, it wins in just about every sport except for men's basketball and football. Outside of Stanford, no one else really in that conference can compete with the big dogs in the SEC and the Big Ten and even in some cases the Big 12 and certainly in the ACC. I like it. Matter of fact, I love it. It's not been quite as eventful as an NBA free agency as there has been in years past. Most of it has been a lot of extensions, right? You've had Zach LaVine. Well, he didn't get an extension, but he got a max deal to stay with the Chicago Bulls. But you had Karl-Anthony Towns got an extension. Devin Booker got an extension. Nikola Jokic got the highest contract in NBA history, which, hey, look, I can't hate on the man. He was up. The Nuggets gave him his money. They should have gave him his money. Listen, people act like I hate Nikola Jokic. I think he's a phenomenal basketball player. Absolutely. I just say he should have been the two-time MVP. That's not disrespect. I'm just saying he's not in the same class with Steph Curry and LeBron James. That's all I'm saying. He's a phenomenal basketball player. But now I think he's deserving of this money too. I'm just saying he won the two-time MVP. But Jokic got an extension. Who am I missing? Trying to think. Someone else got an extension that it's not coming to my mind right now. But one trade that confused me almost as much as the Malcolm Brogdon trade. Not for Boston. Boston, good on you for getting Malcolm Brogdon. It's Indiana that I'm like, what the heck are you doing? You got two bench players and a first-round pick that, because Boston's good, it's like a late first-round pick. This one made no sense from a team that makes a lot of moves that makes no sense, and that's the Minnesota Timberwolves, who traded for Rudy Gobert. I don't get it. This trade came in about 3 hours ago. I don't get it. Because according to Woj, here's the trade. The Timberwolves are trading Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Walker Kessler, Jared Vanderbilt, as well as its 2023, 2025, and 2027 picks unprotected, and a top 5 protected 2029 pick to Utah. All that for Rudy Gobert. This doesn't make sense for two reasons. Number one, you just gave Karl-Anthony Towns a max extension. Well-deserved. Are you going to try and pull a Cleveland Cavaliers and have two bigs? Cleveland at some points has had three bigs. So it's going to be Cat as your power forward and Gobert as your center? Listen, Gobert is an outstanding defensive player, great shot blocker. Actually, I shouldn't say outstanding defensive player. He can't guard the perimeter for anything. But has no offensive game, cannot shoot whatsoever. The bigs in Cleveland can. Evan Mobley can. Lauri Markkanen can. Occasionally, Jared Allen can. Rudy Gobert can't hit the broadside of a barn right now with where he's at with his jump shot. Karl-Anthony Towns definitely can. The guy just won the three-point contest. A center won the three-point contest. We know Karl-Anthony Towns can shoot. Gobert can't. What are the Timberwolves hoping to accomplish? They gave up all their assets. They gave up 3, possibly 4 first-round picks. Solid bench players in Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, and Patrick Beverley for Rudy Gobert? This makes no sense. Then again, few decisions the Timberwolves make sense on the court and off of it. Their late game execution in 3 games cost them a series against the Memphis Grizzlies during these playoffs. And off the court, this is the same franchise. The same franchise that gave up Andrew Wiggins and a first-round pick that turned out to be Jonathan Kuminga to my Warriors for D'Angelo Russell. This is who they are. This is what they do. This is the Minnesota Timberwolves. This trade perfectly represents everything the Timberwolves are about. Making head-scratching moves that makes no sense. I mean, you guys know I'm not a Rudy Gobert fan, but take that. What are the Timberwolves hoping to accomplish by this? A low IQ basketball player with no offensive game who cannot guard the perimeter, and teams will expose that, just like they did when he was in Utah, for all of these assets. You're going to stunt the growth of Anthony Edwards, who looks to be a possible superstar the way he's looked his first 2 years in the NBA. A star, an all-star player in Karl-Anthony Towns, who now is going to have the paint clogged up and is going to have to shoot more jumpers. And then D'Angelo Russell, the inefficient player he is, and the defensive liability he is. Like, they made this trade and didn't trade D'Angelo Russell. Even that had been head-scratching. But, huh? Look, 2 takeaways, or I should say 3 takeaways. Number 1, Minnesota got fleeced again in a trade. What's new? Number 2, good on Utah. They're probably going to buy Patrick Beverley out. I think this is the last year of his contract, about $13 million. They'll buy him out. He'll be on the open market. Reports are that he's interested in going to the Lakers. And then they have the multiple first-round picks. Can they use those as assets to go get Donovan Mitchell a second star? Because, look, we know Donovan Mitchell isn't happy in Utah. We know that. But as part of that, his beef with Rudy Gobert, that's the worst-kept secret in the NBA, we know ever since Rudy tested positive for COVID, did not take it seriously. We all remember the video where he's right when COVID was really starting to become a national story, days before the NBA canceled its season, or I should say suspended its season, because of Rudy Gobert testing positive. He does a press conference and then is touching the mics, touching everything on the table, making fun of it, breathing on everything. And Donovan Mitchell ends up catching COVID. Their relationship was never the same. It was never the same. So would the Jazz, by the way, a great executive in Danny Ainge and a voice that carries a whole lot of value, that of Dwayne Wade, who owns a stake in the Utah Jazz. Did they come to him and say, hey, look, Donovan, we've got 3 first-round picks now. We got a ton of assets. We'll go get you a second star if you stay here. Maybe. I mean, reports are Donovan wants to go to Miami. That's possible. And so if that happens, then the Jazz would have a ton of assets and then could really go in on a rebuild. That probably is the more likely option. But I think what this trade does, it gives them a better chance of keeping Donovan Mitchell, in my opinion. And then my third takeaway is for the Brooklyn Nets. Like, why the Brooklyn Nets? Because Brooklyn's watching this. Now, I know Brooklyn's not the the greatest organization in the world. But Marks, their general manager Marks, has to be watching this and thinking, okay, the Jazz got 3 good role players and 3 first-round picks for Rudy Gobert. What could we get for Kevin Durant? That trade package may have to be a lot bigger than the one I proposed for the Boston Celtics. That's what I'm thinking if I'm Brooklyn. Like, Gobert went for that? What can we get for Kevin Durant? I'm just saying. But that's my 3 takeaways. But just look, for Minnesota, I've never understood how an organization can be so consistently incompetent. It's baffling at times. Like, there's some organizations where you're like, man, they did it again. They found a diamond in the rough, and he turned out well for them. Like, but that's just things we can't figure out. And then there's some teams you're like, geez, it feels like I could run a better basketball organization than this group. I don't know. All I'm saying is, with Rudy Gobert and the loss of those role players, Minnesota ain't going to the playoffs this year. They're not. And I love Anthony Edwards. Wasn't that high on him coming into the draft. He's won me over. But I feel bad for the kid. I feel bad for Karl-Anthony Towns, too. A questionable head coach in Chris Finch. Now, basically no bench. And Rudy Gobert, defensively, leaving a stench. See what I did there? All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. Be sure to catch the Carving Up podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. And, hey, listen, it's the 4th of July weekend, so I hope everybody has a great weekend, obviously, spending time with family. Probably a long weekend for a lot of you out there, considering July 4th is on a Monday. So have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. Warriors still the champs. You know that, right? Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.